I know what you're thinking. Why is the Quad Cortex guy using a real amp? I thought he was into modelers. Well, something happened to me last December. It's a Saturday afternoon and I'm on a date with my wife. We're out in Old Town Tustin and we go to this coffee shop called Hola Adios where they have these really good biscuit sandwiches. We're shopping around, going in stores, and then we did something it feels like I haven't purposely done in years. We went into a guitar store. We're immediately greeted with the cacophony of guitar sounds that is walking into literally any guitar shop, and I just head straight to the back. And that's when I come across this orange Micro Terror head. It's a 20-watt hybrid amp, and all that means is that it's got a solid state power amp but an all tube preamp. Honestly, I just thought it was so darn cute that I just had to try it out. Blown away. The Micro Terror was plugged into this tiny little 1x8 cab, and it definitely did not sound anywhere near as magical as it just sounded, but even still, there was just something to it that was different. And no, I refuse to say it's because the amp was pushing air. I just hate that phrase. It was something about the texture of playing on an amp, and also the interaction between the guitar and the amp that was slightly different. The difference was big enough that I verbally said, I think I've been playing on digital for far too long. Of course, I think the modern convenience of modelers and amp replacement pedals is pretty unbeatable, and even the tone now is really good. My guitar shop experience was enough that it made me want to dust the cobwebs off this amp and give it another go. Like I mentioned before, I live in a condo and I can't crank my tube amp to the sweet spot without upsetting a bunch of neighbors. Turn that crap off! So I decided to move ahead with a different solution. I would try out using a hybrid rig. To do so, I went ahead and bought this. It's a 2 notes torpedo captor. It's a lot of things. It's a reactive load box, it's an attenuator, it's a speaker sim, it's an amp DI. The most important thing for us is this load box and amp DI thing. And if you don't know what a load box is, basically you run the output of your amp into here, and then it converts it down to line level, so you could run that signal straight into some pedals, an IR loader, or in this case, a Quad Cortex. Let me show you how I have this rig set up here. It's actually less complicated than you would think. First up, I plug my guitar into the Quad Cortex, and then I hit it with a compressor, overdrive, fuzz, all that sort of stuff. Then we take our compressed, distorted, fuzzed out signal from the Quad Cortex, and we send it out to the amp head. From the head, we're taking that signal and it comes over here. This is the 2-note torpedo captor. The captor acts as a load box, so it's taking our signal from the amp and converting it down to line level. That way we can send it back to our Quad Cortex here. Now that we have the signal from our amp back into the Quad Cortex, I actually have a split in my chain with 2 different cabs that are hard pan to give us more of a stereo image. From there, it hits the modulation, the delay, the reverb, all the time bass effects. It was really easy to set up. I'm just using my JM Worship preset, which you can grab through the link in the description. All I had to do was substitute out the captured amp I have in there for an effect send, and that was it. Now, I don't think I'm gonna use this setup for live live, but when I'm at home and I'm working on arrangements, recordings, or just playing around in general, it's pretty hard to beat. You get the tone and feel of a tube amp with all the modern convenience of digital. I'm currently working on arrangements for an artist headline tour through Europe, and I've been recording all my guitar into the arrangements this way. I think it actually makes a pretty big difference. One element is just that I'm actually getting better at my job. And second, I think recording guitars through real amps seems to give them just a little bit extra. When you layer in 5, 10, 15 different guitar parts, I think there's a little bit of a cumulative effect. Because I gotta say, I really love how these guitars recorded with the actual amp head are sitting in the mix. Weeks ago, I posted a video where I took this to an even crazier level. I basically used all of my gear. I went guitar to pedalboard, I hit the compressor, the fuzz, the overdrives, and then I took the signal out from there, went straight into the amp. Then I took the output of the amp, ran it into the captor. From the captor, I ran that into the quad cortex to use for stereo cabs. Then I took the output of the quad cortex and ran that back into my pedal board. So I had stereo signal going into my Strymon Mobius, Timeline, and Big Sky. Did it sound good? Of course it did. But it was such a ridiculous setup. I had cables going everywhere and I used pretty much every cable I own to make this happen. So probably not gonna do this on the reg, but it did sound really good. The big question now is how much of a difference does using a hybrid rig versus using just a digital rig actually make? Tonally, I think the difference is pretty small. Difference for me is the feel and how the drives interact with the real amp. The quad cortex feels incredibly lifelike, but there is just something a little different about playing on a guitar in a real tube amp. It's fun, it feels slightly more lively, but that's a personal thing. Most of these differences are for the guitar player, not the listener. I am 100% open to the notion that all of this is just in my head. However, I will say that there is a difference between drives into a real amp and drives into a capture of an amp. I think that difference is great enough that cumulatively you would hear it over a bunch of stack guitars. It's a small difference, but there is a difference. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you, whether you're using a hybrid rig also, all digital, all analog, whatever it may be, comment it down below. Be sure to leave a like on the video before you head out and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.